This is Flint, and you're listening to G.I. Joe, a real American headcast.
G.I. Joe, the Real American Headcast, is the code name for Aaron's daring, highly trained headcast. Its purpose? To podcast about G.I. Joe, Fighting Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
Hey, Joe's brother Ed here, looking at G.I. Joe episode 59. But as usual, I am not alone. I have some of my guests joining me today. So first, from the land down under.
He just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich. And he said, I come from a land down under.
Let's bring out Dave Finn. Hey, Dave.
Hey, yo, Joe.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Can't complain. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Glad to have you here. And next, we have, against my better judgment, which is questionable most times, we have Mr. Brad Abraham, a.k.a. Raptor Hater.
I knew I was going to get that kind of introduction, but it is what it is. I have certainly earned it.
Yes, you have. But Kevin was going to join us. He's down the land down under, but he got sick, so he bowed out. Jared's got a restraining order against me. I was on his last episode and things were said. And, anyways, we're working the details off the lawyers. So to step in, we have someone from an upcoming new podcast from the Headcast Network, the Energon Protocols. We have Mr. Charles Cushman.
Hi.
Hey, Charles.
I am indeed here. I play Classified on the Energon Protocols, which is part of the new podcast for the continuing adventures of G.I. Joe. I've been a collector since '83, and I've been very heavily involved in the customizing community. I've done a lot of design work for the little mini cons you see popping up every once in a while, every once in a while in different places. And if you've been to one of those cons, you might have picked up a figure that I put together or designed. And I've done a lot of file card work, and that's sort of where my passion lies in this, is the writing and all of the kind of crafting around that sort of stuff. So those are my bona fides, and I'm looking forward to being here to defend Raptor in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, I was talking to the role-playing group. Well, if you guys ever want to be on an episode of the show, let me know. I'd glad to have you guys on. And Charles, I will take 59 when Raptor shows up. So you know what? Need to have him on here. Someone help me defend him against someone that's on the group that, that may not be here much longer. No.
I have to say, Charles, I'm impressed by all the stuff you've done. Wow. That's a lot more than I've done.
It's pretty easy to become obsessed about these things. I've definitely, that was a good part of my life. Made a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends all over the world as a result of my involvement in that part of the hobby. I haven't touched base with it in a little while. I'm definitely getting into G.I. Joe again for the first time in a little while with our role-playing games. That is definitely the first time I've come back. And yeah, it's been a ride. Very cool. Met a lot of people. there's a lot of times where you're not supposed to meet your heroes. Met my heroes, and they're pretty good, pretty damn good people. So,
who's your favorite Joe and Cobra? Who's your favorites?
Very hard, very contextual to the various different media it's involved in.
Sure.
My favorite from all time was Ripcord. That's sort of where I signed in on signed into the comic. Was him and Zartan's big fight, that end to end. I'd never read a comic like that before in my life, and it was that's what sucked me into it.
Cool.
I've definitely went that way. I've collected every one of the, I think, 65 now versions of 3 3/4-inch Snake Eyes. I drank the Kool-Aid and followed, the path and everything like that. But there's so much to plumb in depth, and so many different remakes and retitles and things like that that have been good.
Cool.
And before we go any further, real quick from the chat, we have Heinz Koch joining us. He says, "Hello, gentlemen." Hey, Heinz, glad you could join us, buddy. And also, we have to announce for everyone in, this episode is sponsored by both Sean Adams and Big Danny Cool over on the Patreon group. Thank you guys very much for sponsoring this episode. And also, before we get started with the episode proper, I do have some information. Again, Jared was supposed to be here, but again, life got in the way and he had other things going on. We talked about it briefly on the last Bravo team we recorded, and we were debating on having him talk about it there, but we'll do it on the next episode, but he's not here. So Jared went to, I forget which one, to one of the comic convention where Mr. Larry Hama was at. And so I asked him to get some answers to some questions that have been burning. And so he got a couple answers for us. One question he asked was, how did he write the silent issues? And he said he did those fully scripted. As Larry has, as an artist, he's very familiar with how the artist works. And so he tries to write to the artist he's working with. And so that's how he wrote those issues, was writing towards the artist's strong points. The other burning question I've been wondering for quite a while is Cobra Law. As we all know, Larry was, writing the G.I. Joe comics, and the G.I. Joe comics was there to sell the toys. Cobra Law was toys, and it was in the cartoon. And so we asked, how the heck did you not get him in the comics? Mm-hmm. And, because you figured the Hasbro would have wanted them in. And apparently, so according to Larry via Jared, Hasbro brought Cobra Law to Larry and told him, well, here's some new characters. You have to use these. Larry told them, no, I'm not going to do it. They said, well, no, you have to. You don't understand. These are the new toys. We have to get them worked in. You have to. No, I refuse. In fact, you know what? Find another writer. I will walk away.
Wow.
And we see won that battle.
Yeah.
But Larry flat out refused to use Cobra Law. Again, we know Larry was always more for the realistic and more of, especially in the cartoon. But yeah, that's where Larry put his foot down. And I was wondering how he got away without not using them. And that's what it was. He just told him flat out, no, you have to use. No, I'll walk away. You find someone else to write it then.
I guess he was pretty. The run was going with nice momentum by that period.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. So he had some power, or a good position at least.
Oh yeah, as we've talked about, we had the special mission going at this time. They were doing the digest, which reprinted the original issues.
Yeah.
Right around this time, they started doing the Tales of G.I. Joe, which reprinted the original book. The Order of Battle, the versus Transformers. Yeah, this was G.I. Joe's heyday. So yeah, when Larry said he refused, I'm like, but Larry, no.
Well, there is a little bit on top of that, though, that he wasn't actually making any money from writing this comic. He made so much less money than this, and say Bucky O'Hare, right? I mean, that's where he kind of made any money that he has. So it's kind of like quitting your job at Wendy's. I mean, like as far as money goes, it wasn't going to make or break him. He had so much writing cachet and would be moved to another comic if he walked away from it. But
he had plenty of writing and artist capabilities.
Oh, yeah. And design of a narrative and ongoing, and how to write for the long term. But I think
he was editing the NAM at this point, or the NOM, and he had the power, and he flexed it and he showed he has the power because
I have the power.
Yes, he was Marvel's He-Man. I'm not going to do that. So I'm
glad Larry put his foot down. He strikes me as a pretty strong personality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's nice guy, but strong personality, which is good.
I like Cobra Law. Yeah, I do see what Larry was doing in the book. They would not have worked at all. So, like I said, I like him in the cartoon because, again, that kind of fit that world. And like I said, I argue with people all the time, they say that Cobra Law was too far. Did you ever watch any cartoon?
Yeah. I tell you what, I liked Cobra Law when they did it. When Mike Costa and Chuck Dixon were doing it in IDW, they did a good version of Cobra Law. You remember that with Serpentor, was like the cult leader. This is like in the IDW run, like mid 2000s. It was I enjoyed that storyline, but that was like 20 plus years later, and I think they had a bit more flexibility with what they were doing. Do you know what I mean? It was like it's a concept that can be explored, but I don't know if it would have been explored well if it was done, in the mid 80s or whenever it was that movie came out.
Yeah, that movie came out in 87.
Yeah. So I'm glad Larry put his foot down. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that room.
Oh yeah, that'd been interesting. It's like, I always wondered, how did Larry get away? Because they brought all these toys to Larry. He did Battle Force, he did Raptor, he did all these others. But yeah, somehow Cobra Law didn't show up in the comics until much later. That's what it was. Yeah, Larry said, no, I'm not doing it. So thank you, Larry, for that information. Thank you, Jared, for getting that. I appreciate both of you guys. I say Larry, without Larry, wouldn't be here today. So
100%.
So speaking about Larry, let's go and talk about some of his work. We're looking at issue 59. I forgot to do some screenshots on this, but the cover of this one has Raptor, Cobra Commander in his battle armor in the new Pogo, firing down at Tunnel Rat and Outback and the Slam. So let's get some thoughts on this cover. Dave, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Look, it's a great action-packed 80s cover. Good to see Raptor there. Good to see the Pogo, which I'm not sure I'd seen before in the comics. Yeah, I mean, good to see the Spider-Man emblem, the black Spider-Man emblem in the bottom left, the black Spidey. Yeah, love. Very action-packed, very 80s. Beautiful background, that yellow. I mean, for me, it's an 8 out of 10. I very much enjoy it, and it really would have popped on the shelf at the time.
Oh yeah, and Charles, our guest, let's go ahead and get some thoughts. What do you think about this cover? What are your thoughts?
What I love most about this is that this is everything that everybody both loved and hated about this year. Like every single element. I know that everybody, or at least within my friend group and everyone I had access to, loved Tunnel Rat, loved Outback, and continued to love them. They were featured characters ongoing because they were just wonderful characters, looked really good, looked really military. And then you get the Slam, which I don't think anyone has ever liked. It doesn't know what it is. It's sort of this weird thing with mechanical legs that pop out of it. It's supposed to drive itself, but it's always shown as being carried behind some other vehicle. And you can see right there that it's shooting off into space, having absolutely no ability to shoot at even the Pogo, which, again, still better than a trouble bubble, but a bit of a rough vehicle that to try and defend. Raptor looking phenomenal as normal. It's a great dynamic character to be able to show. But I remember this one, not from the comic, but actually from the puzzles, because this was, at least in Canada, a very widely distributed jigsaw puzzle in big and small and all of that sort of thing. And it's this wonderful landscape. It's got all the great combat look in it. And it really does make the characters look heroic. So, yeah, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
Very nice.
Cool.
And
now, granted, you give 11 15 out of 10, right? So, I mean, the 9 isn't really that great, but to me, a 9 out of 10.
Aaron is grudgingly going, I guess I have to have Brad speak about this cover. I knew it. Well, here's the thing. Okay. If I recall specifically several episodes ago where, because I was going on vacation, when I assumed that you guys are going to be talking about issue 59, that I wasn't going to be able to say my piece about Raptor then. So I did say my piece about Raptor.
Yes.
And, we'll get into that. Short version is Raptor's fine. He's not my particular bag of birdseed, but he clearly has his fans, as does this entire iteration of G.I. Joe. And I'm not going to yuck someone else's yum. He's here. He exists. Moving on to the cover. Now, if you were a G.I. Joe fan who fell into a coma, say like 1984, maybe issue 26 or 27, and then you woke up in 1987 and said, "Nurse, I need a bedpan, I need a Happy Meal, and I need the latest issue of G.I. Joe," and they brought you this issue, you might have slipped back into that coma. Okay, I am going to call it an iconic cover, though, because this issue, I think, really marks, I'm sure, for a lot of Joe fans, kind of a turning point in the toy line, in the comic book. And maybe that was just me, and maybe that's just me editorializing, because 1987 is probably the most controversial year in this entire run. Over on histank.com, there was somebody raised a question in the forums: what is the most controversial year of G.I. Joe? And everyone said 1987, because this is the year when characters like Raptor started showing up, and in the toy line you got Crocmaster and Big Boa, and just things get a lot more colorful, a lot more day glow, a lot more
Shirtless.
out there. And yeah, shirtless, sure. And I think that, this is part of a natural development of a toy line. On the one hand, you have to bring in new stuff to keep people hooked. And frankly, a lot of us older G.I. Joe fans, we were starting to age out of the toy a bit, and we're starting to age out of the comic a little bit. And they kind of said, well, to keep this line fresh, to keep these stories fresh, we have to kind of bring in new ideas, new characters, new stories. And this is kind of the end result of that. The issues leading up to this are pretty, they kind of lead to this, but they're not quite as crazy out there as this one is. But I mean, as a cover, though, it's actually a pretty great cover for the comic, because if you look at it, everything on it is new. You've got Cobra Commander in the battle armor. You've got the Pogo. You've got, looks like Outback and Tunnel Rat in the slam cannon, firing away. And yes, it does have Raptor in it. So, but this is the comic. This is where it's going at the time. And you either get on board with it, or you kind of hit the trail. But we'll get into that when we talk about the specific issue. But overall, it's a really great cover. And it did get a commercial. And if you look on YouTube, you can find the commercial for the comic and for all the toys in it as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, I played the promo at the end of last episode, which hasn't been released yet, just due to my life. But, and yeah, it was last issue we were talking about. Yeah, you had your thoughts on Raptor, and the next episode you weren't going to be here. We ended up doing a Bravo team instead, and so you're here now. So, but yeah, as far as the cover, yeah, I love this cover. As I've talked about, the previous issue was my first issue of G.I. Joe, so this was my second issue. I've been off the stand. Like he said, it's very iconic. Yeah, we got Cobra Commander and the Pogo. And again, I like silly concepts. I've got the original Pogo.
Cool.
I just need to get a battle armor. I've got my hooded Cobra Commander in there right now. But I need to get waiting for a classified Pogo. But as I said,
It really was redeemed, though, when they redid it in the 90s, because when you put it sideways and say it's in space and it's got those springs on it to land, all of a sudden it starts to make sense as a concept, because, oh, well, yeah, that's landing on a planet. You're dropping it from something, and that's why those things are there. Turn it on its side, it makes a whole lot of sense. Up and down, maybe not as much.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I agree with you guys. Yeah, it's a very iconic cover. It's very, like I say, it's got, depends on your take. Yeah, either some great characters or some crazy characters on it. I think all four of them are great characters. And like I say, the Slam, I don't have any love or hate for it. It's another vehicle. It's nothing special. It's not crazy enough to make it stand out like the Pogo, as we're talking about, and the Trouble Bubble. Those are a little more crazier concepts. They stand out a little bit more. The Slam, it's an interesting vehicle. But yeah, you ask me about it, I won't think about it at the end of the day. So... But the characters, I love the characters on the book. So, and again, we usually give it the 1 to 5 Yojo Colas. Again, 1 being sucks, 3 being average, and 5 being something like, that Kevin would blow up and hang on his wall. So out of 1 to 5 Yojo Colas, Dave, how many Yojo Colas give it?
For the cover?
Yeah, just for the cover.
4.
4? Very nice. And Charles, 1 to 5.
On that, I've had it on my wall, so I have to give it a 5.
Oh, very nice. Beautiful. Okay. And I will give it a 4.5. I think I covered everybody. Yes, let's give that kind of show, Brad. Brad, how many Yojo do you give it?
You know what? I would give it a 5. But you know what? Why not? I'm in a generous mood today. I'm going to give it a 5. It's not my favorite cover. Here's the thing. It's not my favorite cover, but it is an iconic cover. And when you run down the whole history of covers of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, the original run of the standout covers, whether you like it or not, this is a definite standout cover. And it definitely gives an indication of where G.I. Joe is in 1987 with these characters and these toys. So it gets a 5 for me.
And anyone on the chat lines, if you're out there still, if you go and give a rating if you want to, I can read it on the air. So let's go move on to the issue itself. The cover date on this was May of 1987. but the on-sale date was February the 10th, 1987. The cover price was $1. The title of this was Divergent Paths. Writer, of course, Larry Hama. Penciler, Ron Wagner. Inker, Bob McLeod. Letterer, Joseph Rosen. Colorist, George Roussos. And the editor was Bob Harris. And the cover on this one was by Mike Zeck and Bob McLeod. So before I get started with the synopsis on this one, this was a new toy alert. I guess I need to make a sound for that. New toy alert, new toy alert.
Mm-hmm.
We had Raptor, Outback, Tunnel Rat, the Blind Master, which we never actually got a toy for him back in the day. Jinx, the Slam, and the Cobra Pogo were all introduced this issue. The synopsis for this: the Joes are joined by the new members, Outback and Tunnel Rat, as they move to their next location. As they are now a mobile unit after the events of issue 55, Cobra Commander, Fred 7, and Raptor track the Joes down. Cobra Commander uses the new Cobra Pogo that Fred made and attacks the Joes, but due to a malfunction of the Pogo, they are able to escape. Meanwhile, Billy, on a cybernetic leg that Fred made, makes his way to a dojo, where he meets the Blind Master and Jinx. During their encounter, Billy remembers his training under the eyes of Storm Shadow. Dun, dun, dun.
Mm-hmm.
So, Charles, let's go and start with our guest. Do you have thoughts on this issue?
I don't want to give away the ending, but it seems like everyone forgets that
spoilers.
Cobra Commander was shot in the back and dies. So it's a pretty big issue.
That's actually next issue. Or no.
Oh, is it?
The next issue.
You just spoiled it. You spoiled it.
Oh.
Did I spoil it? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, no, this issue ends with Cobra Commander landing, and he's saying that...
I'm sorry. Yes, that was the
weird.
next one is the big issue. Well, this is fair. Okay, so this does have Cobra Commander taking what seems to be a flying vehicle into a tunnel and crashing it. So maybe it isn't that great of an issue, but from the perspective of people doing amazing things. But it's a good. It really sets up the transition. It starts off what's going to be a very big and pervasive storyline that changes the direction of where the whole storyline is going. It's brought new people into the Joe team with a little bit of at least like creating characterization, even though they're just doing, they're driving from one place to another, and yet they somehow manage to create them some real understanding of what the characters are like in that. So I liked it, but on the other hand, I did confuse it a little bit with the one after it. So I have to say that it's pretty good. I mean, from a content perspective, it's pretty good, and it does start the dominoes falling.
Yeah, see, before I read this issue, I was thinking this is the one also. I was also thinking this is where Cobra Commander gets it, but then, okay, it's next. I had to decide to go and look and say, it's either, I think it's either next issue or 61. I forget now which one it is. But yeah, it's one of the next two issues, the Cobra Commander.
Spoilers.
Well, anyways, Brad, do you have thoughts on this issue? And remember, I can silence you at any time.
Do I have thoughts on this issue? You ask me. Okay.
Studio again.
I'm gonna be magnanimous here. I've already said my piece about Raptor. He's fine. For me, this whole era of G.I. Joe is probably best compared to, say, the Roger Moore or Pierce Brosnan eras of James Bond. I think it was Jared who said that G.I. Joe is closer to James Bond than it is to Jason Bourne. It's never been about military realism. It's a fantasy in the way James Bond is nowhere near the real world gritty espionage that happened then and happens today. And there are eras of G.I. Joe just as there are in James Bond. The Connery films are as different from the Roger Moore ones as the Brosnan ones are from the Craig era. Here I'd say 1982, 84 are separate from 84 to 86. And now we're in like the 87, 88, 89 era. Every 20 or so issues, things tend to change in this comic drastically. And I would agree that they do need to change in order to keep the property fresh, to bring in new audiences, readers, buyers. Aaron, you yourself pinpointed issue, was it 56? Was your first issue of G.I. Joe?
58.
58. So I'm sure that the current run of stories that we're getting into is going to hold a real appeal to you because this is when you sort of jumped onto the book. Now, here we're in full-on Roger Moore, James Bond era of G.I. Joe. We've got Raptor, we've got Battle Armor Cobra Commander, we've got the Pogo, we've got Outback and Tunnel Rat, we've got Jinx, we've got the Billy, we've got all this stuff making its debut. And I really have to say that Raptor kind of proves his mettle here, because it's quite clever how he does track the Joe's hidden base through computerized pay stubs, which is some smart writing and consistent with his character bio being an accountant first as well as a falconer. But speaking of smart writing, and I think I hinted at this long ago, but this issue contains perhaps the finest bit of metatextual writing in any form of storytelling anywhere. For those of you who don't get what metatextual means, it's kind of like when we break the third wall and acknowledge that, yes, this is a story. Harold and the Purple Crayon, the monster at the end of this book are examples of that. And here, it's at the bottom of page 4 when we and Cobra Commander formally meet Raptor, and Raptor starts going on about this. I have genetically improved falcons. We'll turn the tide. And Cobra Commander sticks his finger in his face and says, this bird brain is crazier than Dr. Mindbender. I'm sick and tired of wackos in funny suits. What do you sleep in a nest? And I just feel that's Larry basically expressing his exasperation. Yes, Cobra Commander is dressed quite silly himself. He's got this goofy battle armor with John Lennon eyeglasses, and his hair's in a ponytail. But I have to think Larry was expressing a bit of frustration every time he would meet with Hasbro and they unveil the next year's wave of figures. And he's going, how the heck do I make a guy dressed as a bird work in the context of the storyline I've been building these last 5 years? And I got to say, he does it in a very clever way by kind of leaning into the absurdity of it, acknowledging, yes, some of us are tired of these costume freaks too, but that's G.I. Joe. It's not meant to be realistic. Otherwise, you have to ask yourself how and why every member of the G.I. Joe team wears the same outfit all the time. Like, how often are they doing laundry? Do they have 7 or 8 pairs of everything? Shipwreck with his week's worth of bell bottoms and blue short sleeve shirts and sailor hats. Like, what do they smell like, you know?
That's my head. And they've all got their closets, all the same clothes.
Completely lined up. Well, that's the part of the G.I. Joe organization we never visit, which is the laundromat. Like, who's in charge for laundering all the uniforms and repairing them and patching them up? It doesn't make any sense if you apply a reality filter, and it shouldn't, because this is G.I. Joe. Anyway, that said, I'm moving on here. On a whole, this is a really good issue, and I think the artwork is absolutely outstanding. Like, Ron Wagner has drawn before, but I think him and Bob McLeod paired together. There's McLeod is a bit more of a light touch. Maybe if Jared were here, he'd correct me and say, no, you're completely wrong. But I think that the artwork is just really well drawn. The blocking, I guess you could call it, the frames, the panels, the way they lead into each other. On page 5, there's this great wide shot at the top of this convoy moving through the desert, which is a very Sergio Leone kind of wide, expansive desert vista thing. And you just kind of gradually move in closer and closer. A lot of that's the script that Larry wrote, but just the way it's drawn, it seems to kind of build. It has a sense of tension throughout as Raptor is tracing the convoy. And I just think it completely nails it on that level, to the point where it even makes the pogo seem kind of cool and kind of formidable. In the cartoon and the commercials, it's just kind of bouncing, like someone's dribbling a basketball. But here, you get the sense of this thing kind of blasting itself through the air and, landing against the wall of a canyon, and the springs kind of engaging and pulling it back and then launching it again, and being this thing that's really hard for the Joes to hit and track because it's constantly in motion and everything. And then he kind of screws up and goes into the tunnel, and it crashes, and as we would expect. And that's really the only time we see the pogo in this comic, if I'm not mistaken. He sort of flew it, destroyed it, and that was it. No, wait, I'm wrong. It appears again later on. I just contradicted myself, but we'll get to that. And so I said, on a whole, it's a good issue. But frankly, I think this is kind of where I started to feel, I don't want to say embarrassed to be picking this book up for my local comic shop, but if I was going to pick up an issue of G.I. Joe, I had to pick up Watchmen or a Batman comic, or this is right around the time that DC started introducing their titles like Hellblazer and Sandman, and they kind of relaunched Swamp Thing and everything. So I would kind of grab a whole stack of like the mature readers books, and I'd slip in a G.I. Joe, for old time's sake, I would say. And the guy at the comic book store would kind of roll his eyes and go, yeah, okay, nerd. But, I did kind of start to disengage with the comic a bit just because I was getting into other things. But it still meant a lot to me, and I still stuck with it, because this is a thing that happens when you're a child and then a young adult, and you still like these things. You'd still like Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers and everything, even though you're kind of outgrowing it, but because it was such a part of your childhood and so many happy memories surrounding it. With me and G.I. Joe in particular, many happy childhood memories revolve around this line and these characters. So I may have previously got a new issue of Joe, read it, read it multiple times over the month, read it when the next issue came out just so I could refamiliarize myself. At this point, it became more of a case of reading it, sticking it in the bag and board, and putting it in the long box, and then not really looking at it again until, honestly, Aaron, when I started listening to this podcast back in 2016 or 2017, that kind of prompted me to pull these out and start reading them again. So that is my thought on issue 59 of G.I. Joe.
Very nice. So I've got some thoughts, of course. Like I said, this was the second issue I picked up off the stand. I got in the cartoon when it first came out. I got in the toys right before this. And then I talked about last issue. Yeah, the whole Cobra Commander and the battle armor kind of drew me into the comic. And so, yeah, I enjoyed what I read. I really loved it. But some thoughts on this. I love that when Billy stands up, he flips and he lands in the ninja flip and he starts to fall. That was a nice little touch. And again, at the time, I did not know anything about his backstory, about Storm Shadow training him. So I'm like, what's going on here? Tunnel Rat having the Joes in his size. The Joes are coming over the rise and like, Outback, we had you in our, we could have taken you out. And Tunnel Rat's like, I don't think so. I've had you in my sights for, I don't know how long now. Or no, it wasn't Outback. It was, whoever was in the slam at the beginning.
Tunnel Rat.
No, Tunnel Rat had them in the sights, but there was another Joe. I forgot. I've got the book right here. I could pick it up. Thunder or Heavy Metal or somebody.
It's bad enough that I'm stuck out here in the middle of nowhere testing new equipment with two party animals like Thunder and Steeler.
Yeah. Thunder and Steeler. Yeah. And then my next comment here is that same thing that Brad was talking about, whole Cobra Commander going off on Raptor. And again, as we've talked about, Larry, Hasbro had Larry incorporate all these new toys in. Some Cobra Law, he didn't do it all, but a lot of these he may not have liked. He fit them in a little bit. The Pogo, we see it here once, and then as Brad's hinted at, it shows up once more. Raptor only shows up a couple of times. So he uses them at the bare minimum. And you can tell which characters Larry likes and which one he's like, no, this is stupid.
Yeah.
By how often he uses them in the book. So yeah, Raptor, we can tell, was not one of Larry's big characters. Then when the Joes are traveling and Tunnel Rat was talking about how he's got the new G.I. Joe card, it's going to replace their dog tags and to get the money. To me, I know that's part of the story because, again, that sets up how Raptor finds them. But to me, that very much read as an ad for something. I'm not quite sure what yet, but every time I read it, it comes across as he's, I expect him to look at the camera and smile, an ad for the new G.I. Joe Visa card or something. Again, as I said, as a fan of Raptor, I love that he showed up and he showed how smart he is. Even though he may be as crazy as a crap house rat, he's very smart. Like Brad was saying, he's got that accountant background and it allows him to track down where the Joes are at. And also with his Falcons, he's able to actually hunt the Joes down. So I think that kind of love him or hate him. And again, I'm on the love side, but Raptor very much shows his worth in this issue. He shows why he is, should be a part of Cobra. The introduction to Outback, again, as Charles was saying, we get an introduction to Outback. A lot of people love him, and he gets a lot more play in upcoming issues. But I like when he shows up, he's like, sir, with all due respect, all of that crummy equipment fell apart after the first week. That freeze-dried stuff was plain inedible. I've been living off the land and living good. I just love that about Outback. He's great. Next note I've got here is the look on Raptor's face on page 9. I'll note I'm down, so I'm going to pull it up real quick and re-look at it. I believe it was when, he's in the car and that very stern look on his face as they're driving and they're looking for the Joes. Something about that panel, I just love the way that's laid out. It's just a nice image of that.
I always thought that it looked like he was just really annoyed with the fact that there were birds all flapping around while he was just trying to drive.
Very well could be.
Bird poop in the car.
Or maybe still have Cobra Commander's subset of Cobra Commander's little outburst earlier. I like that Billy remembers his training from Storm Shadow. As I said, I read this issue before I read a lot of the earlier issues, so I wasn't aware until this point that Billy was trained by Storm Shadow. So I like that. As a new reader, I like that little flashback that he gave us. I had to ask Jared about Cobra Commander recognizing the camel pattern. I don't think I ever got an answer from him on that. But it's when the bird brought back the camo pattern. Oh, I recognize this is the G.I. Joe. Is the camo pattern that distinct that you can tell one group for another? I don't quite know about that, but I like the way it read, but I was wondering about that.
Cobra! La, 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 la.
Important podcast editor's note here. So after the recording was finished, I actually got a message from Mr. Ulbrich himself, and he says that as far as the camel patterns, you can usually tell the country of origin of a camel pattern, and it's possible that the Joe team could have its own specific pattern. But if they're using a standard Army APC, then it would have just been a basic U.S. pattern. So either that's kind of wrong, where Cobra Commander was able to tell that it was a G.I. Joe camel pattern. And in fact, it makes sense that he's fought against them for so long that he would recognize their pattern. Thank you for that, Jared. Also, another podcast editor's note here. I'd asked Jared also about the artist for this issue, because we've seen some differences. Mike's Amazing World says it's Mike and McLeod. And according to Jared's Big Book of G.I. Joe, his complete collection, it credits Mike Zeck and Kim DeMolder as the artists on this issue. So it's either Zeck and DeMolder or Zeck and McLeod. We're still not sure, but it does have alternate artists listed there. I'd be curious why there's different listings on that. But anyways, let's get back to the present day of the show. I guess actually the past. But anyways, back to the show.
Cobra! La, 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 la.
Again, seeing the pogo take off makes me smile. I realize, yes, it's a silly concept, but I just, something about the pogo makes me, as I said, some of the sillier stuff I like. It makes me smile. In the world we're living in nowadays, sometimes you just need to smile. I love the look on Cobra Commander's face and his eyes, especially as he realized that he'd take the width of the tunnel into effect. And again, yeah, as we've said, he flies this pogo, this bouncing vehicle, into a tunnel, and then he's surprised when, and he blames Fred when it doesn't work right. Classic Cobra Commander. Blame others for, his short-sightedness. And again, the blind master, right now he's a blind instructor. We find out later that his name's the blind master, but here he says he's no ninja master. So that's just a phrasing or what? Yeah, he is a blind master, but I thought that was a little, what the heck? And then, I love the very end when Cobra Commander, he realized the pogo didn't work like he expected it to, but Raptor is a genius. And I like the Cobra Commander even though, again, he's crazy as a loon, but he's got the smarts. So I like the Cobra Commander recognizes Raptor for his brilliance. So those are my thoughts on this issue. Like I say, it was the second issue I picked up and off the stand. And that may be part of why I love this guy so much. But
it looks good, man. Looks real good.
My Classified. Yeah, I'm split on the backpack design. Again, that kind of borrowing from the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the Vulture makes it actually fly more useful. Because when I opened it, I wish they would have had maybe this plus the wings like he originally had, just because it's an interesting look. Well, but
given the trajectory with the toy line, I'm sure there's a retro Raptor coming at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure I'll buy that.
You'll buy a case, Aaron. Come on. Don't lie.
I like the Falcon that's on the side too, Aaron.
Yeah, my only other concern with the Falcon is that he's got his wings and his hood on. I wish they would have done like Spirit, where you either could switch the wings or have two of them. One like that.
I think I saw a picture somebody had posted online where they'd gotten like a Falcon or an Eagle from, I think it's Mythic Legions, the toy line. It's got its wings all spread out and everything like that. And it's sort of the same scale roughly as Raptor. So you might want to look into that if you want to choose the display.
And actually, those are my only two concerns about the figures. I wish the bird would have, either came with wings out or had clip-on wings or something making so he could fly. And also, I would like to have the second, just the cape.
That'll be the class. I guarantee you that'll be the classified retro version of him. Well, that's what they seem to do with the classified figures with their retro, is they kind of listen, I think, to a lot of the fan chatter. They listen to what people say about it and say, oh, I'd like it better if he had this or that. Yeah. And they'll start working on the design because they know the person who bought Raptor this time around, will want to buy one that's going to have all those extra things on it. Maybe a couple of variations on the capes, one that's more like a cloak, like a Batman type cloak, and then one that kind of folds out. So,
I'm that sucker. Dave, your thoughts on this?
No, I just, the only reason I enjoyed it, it's very much a functional issue. So much plot that Larry gets through in one issue that I think's really well done. I do want to mention, and Brad, you mentioned it, I think the artwork is excellent. Like the artwork on Raptor, the artwork on the faces on Cobra Commander looks so weird with those glasses and that mustache and ponytail. Like it is not how I picture Cobra Commander looking, but it's kind of funny. I'm a huge Outback fan, so it was great to see Outback. I've got the classified Outback. I love Outback. I just think it's a great design. And also Tunnel Rat. Yeah, it is very much like an ad. It's almost like an army ad when he says the new Action Army is definitely user friendly. And I mean, so that was funny. Raptor's just so crazy, but to me, he's very much. You know what he reminds me of? He would be at home in many a cheesy 80s Marvel comic, like in the Marvel universe. Do you know what I mean? Like you probably wouldn't blink twice. He's fun. Yeah, I also like the kid Billy. How about the start where you said the prosthetic leg and the one eye? You're like, when this kid's struggling, but then he does that massive backflip. The only comment I want to make is when you meet the blind master and he says he's not a ninja master, could that be Larry? You know how he always doesn't know which way he's going to go till he writes it, sort of thing. Yeah. So I mean, it's a very, I wouldn't even call it criticism. It's more of an observation. Yeah. And I also thought it was clever how Raptor used. I really liked that he used the Falcons, but the Joes noticed those Falcons weren't native to the area. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting and well done. Also, there hasn't been a classified Cobra Commander in the armor yet, has there?
Which one?
Cobra Commander in the armor. There hasn't been a classified figure of that yet. Because I'd get that in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah.
Overall, a very enjoyable issue, and I do think the artist really should pat himself on the back. I'd never seen the pogo used before. It seems ridiculous. I'd heard it was very ridiculous, so it was fun to see it in a comic. No, I very much enjoyed this issue. It was good fun.
Yeah, there's been some fan art renders of Cobra Commander with his regular costume with a snap-on battle armor and swappable heads for the helmet and the mask and all that. But yeah, Hasbro hasn't given us a classified.
They've got to do it, man.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm
that Raptor classified you've got, can you bring those wings down as well?
Yeah, the wings on this are.
You can sort of They
can go in front of them.
That's a good looking figure, man. I like that figure.
They can almost act like armor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
They go up a little bit and down.
Excellent. Yeah. No.
It's very posable. Yeah. The backpack flying thing is, it's very posable. You can do different things with it.
Yeah.
Very nice. I
good
really
stuff, man. He's your number one guy, so happy to see him represented.
Me too. But Charles, do you hear the thoughts on this issue?
Well, I covered most of them, but I did want to say that the arcs, like these, we were talking about when Billy does the flip. If you see this big white rainbow arc that says "swoop" on it, and they were able to do that with a bunch of the pogo moves too, where it was just these wonderful big arcing movements that show the movement on the screen and add like a sound effect to it, and it really feels like motion. And I know that that's really hard to do on a static page, but I mean, if you take the swoop out and the little the superhero landing kind of yellow bursts out from underneath it, it's just a kid squatting, and that would not in any way really tell the story that big fool does. And there are numerous different pieces in it where you just see this big arc and and these big curves that draw the eye and show and really create that motion sense. And I absolutely adore that it can create that kind of movement on the page. I don't have a single page that I like as much as the Outback Origin one is great because it defines an entire character and its entire being in a single page. But yeah, exactly like that one. That screams motion in a way that you can't really do any other way. And so just the sheer kinetic joy of seeing that and really feeling that movement is huge.
Very much so. Yeah, no, that's one thing. Yeah, like you said, if they didn't do the motion lines and some of these sound effects right, it may look silly. But yeah, with the motion lines in there, they give you the sense of movement of either small movements or of these gigantic, like I said, this giant bubble just lifting up off the ground and landing elsewhere. So yeah, no, it's fantastic. Brad, any other degrading comments about Raptor you want to make?
Degraded, and I think I've degraded Raptor enough. No, I'm just going to echo what everyone else is saying. the artwork in this, I mentioned it off when I started talking about it, but I think the artwork is just exemplary. It is exemplary artwork. I was just looking through it thinking of, the page of art question. Which page of art would you go through? And I could honestly say I don't think there's a weak page in this at all. Oh, but there's some motorcyclists on my street. If you want to pick that up, but it just flows really well. The action is great. The quiet moments are just as great. It's an issue that really just kind of flies by, isn't it? There's not really a wasted moment to it. Every page tells a story, and every page advances the story and the characters, which is what you want when you only have 22 of them.
Yes, very much so. And again, sorry, I forgot you earlier, David. Do you have any other comments on this issue?
I just want to say, in terms of favorite page, that image with Tunnel Rat when he appears, I just think it's so iconic. Like that panel, know.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of like Charles was saying, there's a lot of great panels in this book.
Exactly. There's exactly right. You could pick any number of pages. I also like the final page as well a lot, but it's a really strong issue in the middle of a really strong run. So it's good stuff.
I agree 100%. With that, let's go move on to the next segment. Again, I'm trying to make this a little more visually exciting for those out there in YouTube land that's watching it live or even recorded. So the next segment.
The Real American Hero.
Anyways, this is the Real American Hero. This is the Joe, Cobra, or someone else that you think deserves special recognition or extra praise. Let's go and start Brad this time. Brad, do you have a Real American Hero?
Well, I'm going to have to say it's Raptor in this one. I mean, as silly as he looks, as goofy a character as he is, and I do hate to say it, but it is Raptor. Despite looking goofy and being called a freak by Cobra Commander, he does some clever computer trickery to locate the Joes, and he uses his birds to locate the convoy. It is and will forever be Raptor's finest moment in this comic. So Raptor gets it.
You're not wrong there. And Dave, who is your Real American Hero?
Gosh, I'm torn between Raptor and Tunnel Rat. I'm going to go Tunnel Rat, but with honorable mention to Raptor. I thought Tunnel Rat was cool. Was this Tunnel Rat's first appearance?
Yes, this is Tunnel Rat and Outback's first appearance.
He popped, and I really liked. It's more the visual. I liked the stripes on his face as well. Like the camo stripes. Right. Tunnel Rat by just an inch.
And in case people aren't aware, Tunnel Rat is kind of based on Larry Hama's looks. So
that's cool.
So and Charles,
I'm going to absolutely break what everyone thought was going to happen, because frankly, I was really expecting Brad to go in a different direction. So said everything that I was going to say. So I'm going to throw out Fred 7.
Nice.
Fred 7 created the battle armor. He whipped together in apparently like a day and a half an entire cybernetic leg, which can be used to do ninja moves.
Yeah.
He built the pogo, but because that doesn't really go to his credit, but he is able to do pretty much anything with just the resources of this one little garage that he's put together. And we see where that takes him eventually. But the guy is pretty damn smart. Like he is, there really isn't a weak person in whatever this particular garage is in the middle of nowhere. Denver, I guess, is where it is. But I mean, just a really smart guy. And I up to this point, I didn't really think of the Crimson Guards as like they were accountants and lawyers and white collar workers. I hadn't actually seen one be a brilliant, mechanical engineer. And so I think he gets completely overshadowed in this, but you get the feeling he's going to have his day.
Oh yeah. Yes. And I like Fred. He's a great character. Tunnel Rat's great. Another great introduction. Also, as Dave mentioned earlier, Outback's a great character, but I am going to have to, again, my prejudice has been shown already. I am going to have to give it to Raptor.
Least surprising news of this whole show.
Pretty much. Yeah. If you didn't know that, we've been listening to. But no, like Brad said, he's shown, even though he maybe, wearing a bird costume and hanging off birds. And it may be a bit of a bird brain. He's actually a genius. And yeah, he shows in this very episode, his first appearance. So I've got to give it to Raptor. But they were all nice. Yeah, this had a lot of great characters in it to choose from, as usual.
Yeah.
So, and again, my actual notes on this says from a Real American Hero, Raptor, F the world. So any Raptor haters can just suck it. Hey, Raptor, what's going on, buddy? No. Anyways, next. Sorry, I can't read those little digs just because I'm petty. The next section is the page of art. As I've talked about, this is a page of art that you'd like to hang up on your wall, maybe get blown up even bigger. Let's go ahead and start with Dave. Is there a page of art?
Oh, sorry, I thought I had done this. The one where
you did mention earlier,
where Tunnel Rat appears. Yeah,
and that was you referring to.
It's the one where he comes up and he's sort of like he ambushes them. No, the one where he appears where they're saying like, oh, we've got them pinned down and stuff, and then he just turns up.
Well, that's his first story. Yeah, that's where he shows up out of the they're like, we have it in our sights.
Yes.
And,
yes.
He pops out. And, he's like, yeah. Great page. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that page. I think it's
Brad. Do you have one page out of this?
Well, it's hard to narrow down because I said I think every page in this book is a winner, but I'm going to go with page 17. It's got just 3 panels on it, and it's the first one has Outback leaping from one vehicle to the other as the Pogo is trying to shoot him. And then the second panel, it's got the Pogo flying over to a canyon wall and bouncing back off of it. And then the third panel's got the Pogo pursuing the APC with the slam and closing in on him. It's a nice, simple, quick little bit of action. It's evocative without being overly drawn. It's not loaded with 3 simple panels. It's very easy to follow, and that kind of speaks to the whole issue. It's not over illustrated. It's not broken down into too many panels or too much action. It flows beautifully. So I really like that page.
Very nice. And Charles, I know we talked about earlier, you said there was a lot of panels you liked. Was there one specific page that you narrowed down that you like?
It's really tough to say because, again, they generally, in this particular one, managed to take the action panel and then surround it with the narrative because there was so much narrative going in.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite individual panel is going to be the one that nobody ever picks, ever. But I love this. If you look at the top of, it says in Denver. I can't, I don't have the page numbers here, but there's this one panel that shows the entire city of Denver. They put one expositional bubble in it.
Oh, you talking about this one right here?
Yeah. So look at how much effort they put into one bubble worth of exposition. Like it is a massive detailed picture of Denver that's been created.
That's on the top panel on page 6 I'm referring to.
Yeah, that is the one. Yeah. And it just like he didn't have to do anything there, right? There was no reason whatsoever to put that kind of effort into what is just a small piece of exposition. And it's, I knew it. Yes. You think I'm crazy, but I'm not. Like that piece, it would be a throw off line, but it's on this beautiful landscape with like, these streaks of orange in the sky and the mountains in the background. Like it was just so extra that I can't help but love that. And there's so many of these things like where there's a lot of real exposition in introducing these new characters, but you have a bunch of Wally Wood style shots that are really throwing action in there. But I mean, if I was going to have to cut it down to one page, it would be Outback's introduction because it is the simplest, clearest one-page introduction I've ever seen for a character. You know everything you need to know as a result of him, and he's cool. He is exceedingly cool. Like that is I think it's the one where he lies down. There we go, right there, where he gets onto a Havoc, which is a self-destructive thing in the first place because those things are going to kill you. And he just lies down. It's like, I'm military, but I'm just going to take a nap. It's that line between disrespect and self-confidence that just says this guy is cool, and you give him all this equipment and it all fails and it's garbage, and he doesn't care. He's just happy to be out in this, and hunting his own food. living in his own shelter and going on it. You don't really get much cooler than that for a guy who runs around in a white T-shirt in the middle of battle.
Outback's great. I love Outback, and he gets his own little moment here in upcoming issues. But it's a great introduction for him. And my
fantastic character.
Yes, and my page is page 15. Again, we get Raptor, we get Cobra Commander on the battle armor, we get the Pogo, we get Fred. And as Charles was kind of saying earlier, the Pogo taking off, that whole whoosh with the whole showing it actually lifting off. It's fantastic. It was hard to choose also, because as you guys have said, there's a lot of great panels in this book, a lot of great pages. But that's going to be my panel is that one there that has Raptor, Cobra Commander on the battle armor, the Pogo, Fred 7, all of that. Fantastic. But they were all great choices. I say it was hard to choose in this issue because a lot of great art in this book. Moving on to the next segment I have is Postbox the Pit. These are people from Facebook, mainly Facebook and Patreon, because I don't do a lot on Instagram and Twitter or X, for better or for worse. That's where I'm at. But so these are people on Facebook that have commented or something that I feel deserves special recognition. First one is Sean Adams. He started listening to the podcast about 3 months ago, and he's completely caught up. And he's purchased over 100 issues of the run for his grandson.
Cool.
He said, "We're too much fun, or so much fun." Yes, even Jared and Jared 2.0. Keep the fun coming, Yo Joe. Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. Again, Eric Smith. He's posted images and information on the upcoming G.I. Joe series, and again, he is our game master on our role playing game we play. There's Blood for the Baron is always posting things. Michael Koronaka, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. I'm terrible at names. A.K.A. Big Toxin. He's always posting various G.I. Joe things. He's recently posted on the Facebook group a G.I. Joe name generator, which was interesting. Ben Wiley, he's always posting his sales. I do have to mention previous host on the show, Pat Sampson. Also Kevin Reitzel. Don Man Art. He does a lot of 3D printables. Hoover Jeremiah, he's a big supporter of the group. Thank you, Hoover. Jim Beard, he's released his 4th book in his DC Jones series. I talked with him over on Bravo Team here a couple months ago. Love Jim. He's a great guy. And I love that DC Jones series. I highly recommend if you guys haven't read that yet. Lily Cohen is always posting news about the G.I. Joe sales and stuff from Hasbro and Super 7. Esteban, I'm going to mess this one up. Saifutis?
Esteban's a good name, I must say.
Yes, that is. Esteban always posts various links. Lee Hill and Everyday Joe. And then over on the Patreon, we have Bill Beer and Gene Hendricks. And then the big donors over there is Big Danny Cool and Sean Adams. Again, thank you both very much for your donation. Thank everybody that supports the show anyway, but especially thank you too for your big donations over there.
The deep pockets there, man. The deep pockets, the funders.
Yes, very much so. And the next segment I do after the Postbox the Pit, we have the Soldier of the Month. This is someone that's done something special for G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe community, or for me. Again, I'm not, as I've said before, I'm not above bribery. That's why I give it to the guy that gave me a Maury one time. But anyways, that's another story entirely. This month, for the Soldier of the Month, I'm going to give it to all the guys over on the Energon Protocols. We have one with us now, Charles.
And besides our very own Charles Cushman, a.k.a. Classified, I also want to mention the other names. There is Josh McGuire, who plays Reaper, Ryan Costello, who plays Scaffold, and, of course, our beloved game master, Eric Smith.
Again, we were playing on Mondays, but my wife set up an appointment for my son. He's got some therapy he has to do, and the only time they could do it was on Monday afternoons. So I was going to have to back out of the game, but all the guys said, "Oh, no, we let's move it to a different day." So we moved it to Thursday because they would rather have me in there instead of me ditching it. So
wow,
I appreciate all of them very much for, it makes you feel wanted, and I know we'll change the day. Hell with it. Let's go for it. And like I said, I enjoy playing with Charles and everyone else that's involved. It's great bunch of guys.
Couldn't play without Hardman. It wouldn't make any sense. The team needs its heavy. I mean, that's always the center, right? So
you'd be a big loss, I can imagine, Aaron. Like
yes,
you'd be a huge loss to the team.
It'd be unplayable, frankly.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And then we'll play this.
To our Soldier of the Month from all of us here at G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, in the Headcast Studios. We salute you.
Like I say, I'm trying to do more visual things for the YouTube people out there watching in YouTube land. For the 1 or 2 people that shows up there. And that's the first part of the show. We're going to take a quick commercial break. I'll play some promos from some other shows, and we'll be right back for anyone listening to the podcast with the next segment.
G.I. Joe will return after these messages.
Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr. If you're a history lover or a musical lover, you probably know about both Hamilton and Burr's rise to power in the early stages of American history and their infamous duel. But what if you didn't know the full story? What if one of them was a werewolf? White Rocket Entertainment proudly presents a 48-page full-color comic book, Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale. Written by Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist, art by Nate Niles, colors by Ace Wheely and Ken Solomon, letters by Percival Constantine, and edited by Johanna Albrecht. Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale. Available digitally on Kindle and Comics Central, COMIX Central. Prefer a print copy? Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale, along with my other published works, are available at theyardsaleartist.bigcartel.com. That's theyardsaleartist.bigcartel.com. Or you can buy it directly from me, creator Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist, at any of my Comic-Con appearances. Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale. Get your copy today. You won't regret it. Don't take my word for it. Here's what Ming Chen from AMC's TV series Comic Book Men had to say about it.
I really enjoyed it. A lot of great werewolf scenes in here. A lot of great... this is how I wish history would be told to kids. Books like Hamilton versus Burr, A Werewolf Tale.
That's Hamilton versus Burr, A Werewolf Tale.
Oh, hi, Dr. Sterner.
Hello, Paul. How are you doing these days?
Yeah, I'm good. Since you, cured me of my DC OCD, I've got so much more time on my hands. It's been for the best.
Well, personally and professionally, I'm quite proud of what we have achieved, but I have some bad news for you, Paul.
What?
There's something missing without your DC OCD there.
Oh.
I've even heard friends of yours been saying you're basic, a little boring. There's no there.
Oh, well, what should we do about it?
My God, I hate to have to say this, but we have to go bring it back somehow.
Well, shall we do some more sessions and I can use them to talk about DC events that we haven't covered, like Dark Crisis and Fear State, those sorts of things?
I think that might be for the best, Paul. Let's reconvene in 2024 for more sessions of DC OCD.
And that'll make me interesting?
We will see, Paul. We will see.
You are receiving a transmission from the Rod Pod. Upload pending.
Stand by for soundtrack transfer.
I am Maggie.
And I am John.
And we are trapped, hurtling through space in a ship shaped like Rodimus's head.
The ship, for reasons we haven't been able to determine, contains the entire run of the IDW Transformers Phase 2 comic, which chronicle the events following the end of the war between the Autobots and Decepticons. So we figure we may as well read them all in order and report our findings to you. Stand by.
Upload complete. Now.
The Rod Pod. Look for us at marriedwcomics.libsyn.com, at iTunes, at Stitcher, or wherever good podcasts can be found.
So, till all are one.
Till all are one.
Till all are one.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
And welcome back to the show. Hope you guys enjoyed those promotions. I don't know which ones I played yet, but I'm sure they were all great. Dave had to step out. Again, being Australia time, there was some time mix up and he has a work thing to do. So he had to run away screaming.
He has a job. He's got a job to go through.
No, he's got a life. Well, for him, yeah, for me, it's Sunday afternoon. For him, it's like Monday morning. So
it's in Australia's in the future from where we are right now. So
he's actually doing some work. So
it is a fine country with fine people and fine breakdancers too, I might add.
And on that note,
Yo, Joe! He'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra, the enemy, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose? To defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up. He'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe.
I'm 54 years old. I'll be 55 in December. And that intro still makes me smile. just fantastic. But yes, that's a cartoon. Again, for anyone listening to the podcast, if you want to see the visuals I'm doing, join up and join us. Usually the fourth Sunday of every month. I say this month I had to move it forward a week because I'll be out of town next weekend. But yeah, join us over on YouTube. But we're here to talk about the cartoon now. This was called The Traitor Part 1. Director was John Gibbs and Terry Lennon. Written by the fabulous Buzz Dixon. First aired November the 25th, 1985. And the synopsis from Wikipedia. G.I. Joe designs a new armor treatment that's impregnable to laser fire and missiles. While on leave, Dusty is desperate after seeing his mother struggle with her asthma and mounting health bills. So he makes a deal with Extensive Enterprises' Crimson Twins to pay for the costs in return for the armor formula. He secretly informs Cobra about it, leading his own team into an ambush that left Duke in a coma. Now, the Joes have a traitor in their midst. Dun, dun, dun. Let's go and start with our guest, Charles. Do you have thoughts on this episode?
I really do. I want to start with, just because I'm Canadian, I would like to point out that this is yet another example of there are so many American stories that don't translate well over to other countries in the world because they have a humane healthcare system. and I keep seeing this over again with like Mr. Freeze, and all of these origin stories are, I had to turn evil because I couldn't get healthcare. And I'm like, that is such an American story, that I had to turn evil in order to save my family from that. I mean, here it would have been like, okay, yeah, she might have died filling out all the forms, but she would not have been near death due to asthma. Like that just feels like a terrible thing for anyone to have to go through. It is one of the great ones. It's not my favorite two-parter, but I think we were talking about this earlier, is that the two-parters are really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're really good stories. The five-parters, obviously, they followed a certain formula. The two-parters definitely followed a bit of a formula in that they came up to a point of absolute crisis. And in this one, and there's a whole lot of middle into this, but jumping sort of right to the end of the story, when he gets pulled out of the bus, because they're all standing around there and going, I don't think he's really the guy. I mean, I think this is all a sham. This isn't really there. And they look at him and he escapes, and they all stand there. It's not like they don't have weapons or anything and they couldn't just shoot at the things. And they just stand there and incredulously watch this guy be taking off there and go, we are so totally screwed. Like, we are so totally screwed. We have terrible operational security. Apparently, every single person in the organization has access to 7,000 different codes that do different things. They have like no operational flexibility because they do the same thing every time, to the point where you can predict where to put balloon-covered nets up to stop them. And they go, we are so totally screwed. And it was this weird sinking feeling that in my guts as a kid, I was like, they're doomed. They are doomed.
Welcome to America.
I mean, it was so it was almost heartbreaking. Like, I didn't have I've seen this set up for the health thing before, and I was like still kind of reeling from the first scenes where these tanks come out and the missiles come down and doesn't affect them at all, which happened about half the time anyway. But this armor treatment was in place. And so, take one step back. The ship coming in and crashing, right? Like that was a really good opening. You knew something big was going to happen. The weird arm going up and, grabbing down to pick up poison gas, which is just kept in bins, like these little things with no protection around them whatsoever, no guards. You wouldn't want that.
Welcome to America.
And then the tanks come up and then start shooting at the Cobras right over the poison gas. And like a couple of shots either way would probably end up killing all of the staff and crew that were handling this stuff. But it just turned into this big, huge thing. And I felt like a real sense of danger coming out of it. Then, of course, Cobra, opens up the thing because all big boats have a little thing where little boats come out of, and took off into the sunset. And, they're there. The twins were there. They're always Heckle and Jekyll. They're, just bumping into stuff and crashing. They have the worst superpower of any human beings ever, in that, the guy who isn't even really damaged somehow, like the first guy gets knocked over, so he's lying down and the other guy feels like he's knocked over. It's like the worst thing ever. And it plays out over and over again from their trouble bubbles. But I'll leave that alone. But the story builds and the story builds and the story builds, and you see him getting pulled a little bit more in, a little bit more in. And even as a kid, I could see the first time you take that step, that first check got written, he was done, right? There was no way he could come back from that, because then he could be blackmailed. It's like, no, don't do the one thing. You cross that line once, you're done. And he did. And that's what happened. And at the end of it, just as Cobra's like, yeah, for good. Yeah, screw him. We don't care anymore. He served his purpose. That was great. And wait a minute. No, he was going to get us something. I had a different plan for this. Yeah, no, we'll go save him. Let's go save him then. And it just was this real. It was between the comedy of them forgetting that they even brought him there, and of course the weird inept things that were done around that, and how really not a special missions force the G.I. Joes are, but also this real sense of threat that all of this was collapsing because one of their own had turned traitor. And I remember that I deliberately, because I didn't see the second episode for until reruns a couple of years ago, I deliberately did not buy that figure because I thought he was a bad guy. And so it did have this big impact on me as a kid, and it was big and heavy. And, had I seen the second half, it probably wouldn't have been, it would have been resolved. Right. But it was just, and that's sort of one of the hallmarks of the stuff Buzz did. He didn't write down, right? He didn't dump, some of the things were, the consequences were almost removed. Everyone parachuted out of the planes when they were shot down and everything like that. But what it really came down to is this was a heavy topic. This was a sick parent, right? Having to choose between the people that you work with and the people that you're loyal to and family. It was having to choose to make really hard decisions. It also had a really cool bar fight, but this was a really big, heavy thing. And that's the kind of thing that Buzz had brought to us. It was that it was not writing down. It was not when the Deke, sorry, I said that wrong. I didn't actually. Cartoons came back in and went after that. I'm writing down, I'm making it stupid, I'm making everyone a clown, I'm making everybody that's what was lost. So yes. So Buzz, who I promised that I would actually do 2 promo things for him. So hopefully you can indulge me in this, but he's going to be in San Diego Comic Fest from the 25th to the 27th in San Diego. And so if you want to go and see him and ask him about this episode and the other episodes, you certainly can do so. He loves chatting about the old days and the old times. And he's also got a novel out called Cheeky on Kindle Vella. You get to see the other side of Buzz Dixon, the one that, was the editor of Penthouse Letters and the definite kind of different guy than the one that you would think of as being the one that wrote these comics and things like that. So it's really interesting to be able to see the depth of this guy. But what you see from this broad experience of all these different places, he's always been a writer, but he's never written crap. He's never written, the stuff the tripe, the stuff that Hasbro probably really wanted him to write because they didn't want to be offensive. They didn't want to stress out these kids. We were all like afraid of nuclear war at that point. And so, if it had been on a sitcom at the time, it would have been a very special episode because it just dealt with some pretty heavy things. And I mean, you got to give full credit for it. I was really glad when I saw the second half of it. I think it was like 2-3 years later in the reruns, but it was really one that stuck in my mind. And it sits up there with, there were a couple of other 2-episode items that were really good too, but the 2-episode ones were better than the 5-parters, really. I mean, when it came down to it, it was really a good piece of narrative. So, hats off, really good. And it was a pleasure to watch it again because it really, some of the old feelings came back out of it.
Very nice. And Buzz is a great guy. I talked to him on the show before. Yeah, I love talking to Buzz. He's great. Brad, thoughts on this episode?
Oh boy, after everything's said, I'm not sure I can say anything better than Charles did. He really kind of.
That's how I felt when you were talking about Raptor.
Although I do wonder if this episode is why all those classified Tiger Force Dusty figures peg warmed as hard as they did, because it seemed like they were everywhere. It's like,
I just
please buy one. Although I will add, as a Canadian as well, though one who makes his home in the U.S., I do echo Charles's comments about the U.S. healthcare system. Someone somewhere once said a show like Breaking Bad would never work in Canada because Walter White's chemo would have been covered by OHIP. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer back in 2008, and they had her in for surgery the week following and chemo and radiation for months afterwards, and she didn't have to pay a penny outside of her taxes for it. It's not a perfect system. There are waiting issues and backlogs and things, but you're not going to go bankrupt from it either. But that is neither here nor there. We're talking about G.I. Joe, and we're talking about this 2-parter, and as has been said before, anytime there's a 2-parter in this series run, it's going to be a good one. And this episode delivers on that, even though it's maybe not as campy and memorable as something like Worlds Without End with different dimensions and stuff like that. But I think it's memorable for putting Dusty, who then and now was a fairly minor Joe, in the spotlight. And again, has also been said on this podcast, the TV show had an advantage over the comic in that these second and third tier Joes got a little more airtime compared to the comic, where many of them, like Footloose and Dusty, they're introduced and they kind of fade into the background after the big intro, even though a lot of them get a lot of additional playtime, I guess, in special missions. The Joes who were more of a specialty, whether it was Arctic or desert or jungle, they really kind of got their moments in special missions. This does earn some cred, though, again, as Charles pointed out, this motive for Dusty's actions. And it does genuinely put Dusty in a relatable dilemma that Cobra comes along to exploit. Though, for me, the biggest question it raised was, how secret is this top secret special missions force called G.I. Joe? Because if Cobra can track down Dusty's mother, why aren't all the Joe's families at risk? It's cartoon logic, obviously. Adult me kind of wants to know this because, as we all would agree, knowing is indeed half the battle there. But I mean, again, I stole Charles' thunder off the top with my thoughts on Raptor. He kind of said everything I wanted to say about this episode. It's a really great one. I think it's one of the ones that I completely forgotten existed until I watched it. I went, oh, okay, yeah, I do remember this one. Although I will just keep this short to the point. I did laugh out loud at the reveal that Dusty was being sentenced to hard time at Fort Wadsworth, which is a bit of an Easter egg if you've read the comic and you know where Fort Wadsworth is. But speaking as a former New York City resident, being sentenced to hard time on Staten Island is quite the punishment. So I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, no, you guys have covered this. Yeah, it's fantastic. As I said before, the 2 and 5-parters are my favorite episodes. A lot of times they get a little more serious than the goofier, sometimes they're still goofy, but yeah, no, as Charles said, this is a very, even though it has some goofy elements, and we do have the whole American healthcare issue. And like I've seen before, a lot of Batman villains would have been stopped had there been OSHA laws, in the DC universe. So yeah, same kind of thing here. If we had the Canadian healthcare system, yeah, Dusty may not have gone Traitor. No, I see. I love Dusty. He's a great character. We talked about him. He had a kind of a lead role in last issue's comic, issue 58. Him and Mainframe were kind of the focus on that story. This month, he gets the focus on this episode in the next month. And again, I like Dusty. He's a great character. I've got the figure. I don't got the Tiger Force one, but I got the regular Dusty figure because, again, Tiger Force, not so up on those. For those who are listening, I threw a link on the Facebook group for the Cheeky story that Charles had mentioned earlier. I throw a link to that on there. Again, I can recommend it. I haven't read that one, but anything Buzz does is fantastic. Yeah, that freighter that first showed up, when it first crashed in and, they lasered their way out through that, made a doorway, they lasered their way through. Like, okay, well, maybe they stole a ship and used that. But yeah, then right after that, the top part of it splits apart for the Cobra Command to come out. And then that back door pops up. I'm like, what? So did they steal this or is it specially modified? I don't quite understand what's going on with this ship at this point. It kind of confused me. Yeah, so some of you guys, I think it was Brad was saying, it's supposed to be a top secret group, but Cobra was able to find out where Dusty's mom's at. Again, they say it's top secret, but yeah, they've had not Geraldo, but his counterpart on here before doing 20 questions. And they said in this episode that, his mom makes the housekeeper, whatever, says Dusty's mom has him keep all the clippings about him. So it's not so secret in this universe. And they've gone after the Joes families before for the Synthoid conspiracy, and they learned maybe not to do that when they went against Gung Ho's family in the swamps and were taken captive themselves. But yeah, like I say, I do remember that. This is one of the 2 parts. So I remember this episode when it came out. Oh, yes, I love the Traitor. It's a great episode. And yeah, if things had been a little bit different, things may have turned out differently in it. They wouldn't have had a story to tell. But yeah, overall, yeah, I do like, there are some silly moments in it. Sometimes make you, what the heck? But again, not to be anti-American, because I am, I guess, the lone American in the group at this point, except for our transplant Brad. But yeah, I mean, our health care does leave something to be desired. Again, I've been on Facebook comments, arguing with people about, how we should be able to take care of our citizens' health care. And, oh, no, look at Canada. Their health care is horrible. You got to wait forever. And like Charles said, you're not going in debt. Sometimes you may have to wait a little time, but yeah, they're like Brad was saying, when his mom had issues, they took care of it almost right away. And again,
I think
she didn't die in poverty.
No, not at all. No, she's still kicking. She's 82. Yeah. I shouldn't have said that. She's going to get angry for saying, why did you tell him how old I was? No. Well, you know what? I mean, that's a separate argument there. Although in medical, there is a thing known as triage, which is you assess the needs. So yeah, if you just need knee surgery or shoulder surgery or something like that, and if it's not in danger of killing you, you can wait a bit. You may not want to wait a bit, but you can wait a bit. If you've got a malignant tumor or possibly malignant tumor, they will get it in there and they will remove it.
Yeah,
keep sweet. They won't keep you waiting for months and months and months. And I'm skewed a little because I live in Massachusetts, so the healthcare here, yes, it's private, but there's a public option as well. And thankfully, through work, we're well covered for things like that. So that is the editorial for this particular episode.
So the funny thing about that is that at one point, and I don't know if it's in this one or the next one, Shipwreck walks through this abandoned Cobra facility and looks down and he goes, "Hey, they get free health care." So it's a bit on the nose, right?
I have to wonder. Yeah. I have to wonder if Chuck Dixon was going through some sort of dispute with his insurance company at the time, or if the Sunbow animators, the Writers Guild, rolled him over to a new health insurance plan, and he got ticked off about it. So he's like, I'm going to use G.I. Joe as my megaphone to say, hey, wait a minute, Cobra gets all this cool stuff. What are we doing here?
I mean, Buzz Dixon, not Chuck.
I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if the health insurance that Cobra offers is first rate, because how else are you going to get people to join your terrorist organization? I'll bet you I'd love to see, and I said this before, I'd love to see like a comic book, even like a spin-off miniseries or something just about Cobra, but just how the organization works, how they would go about from targeting people, recruiting them, bringing them on board. You go to like a Cobra company town, the schools are great. Everything's covered. You don't have to worry about all the stuff you would have to worry about in a normal everyday US of A life. And you could sort of see where the appeal would come. So yes, you have to wear these uniforms and you have to perform acts of terrorism and you have to go harvest elements for a weather dominator or a mass device, and you got to deal with Cobra Commander's tantrums and all the crazy stuff. I mentioned this a while ago. There's a really interesting young adult series, or maybe it's middle grade fiction series called G.I. Joe Classified. If you look for it, you can find it. I think there's 2 books have been released, and the third one's coming. And it kind of recasts a lot of the characters as teenagers, which sounds like a recipe for disaster, right? But it was actually pretty entertaining, just as a fan of G.I. Joe. But to say, well, how would these characters work? And in the case of this book, Cobra is kind of like an Apple computer or a Tesla. It's like a company town, high tech. Everything's high tech. Everything's surveillance. But you get a job working for this organization, and you're like a little cog in a very large machine. You don't quite know what you're working on. All you know is you have to file these reports and send this fax and everything else like that. Everything's very compartmentalized. But as these kids investigate, and they discover this whole conspiratorial web of everything being interconnected, everything's a little nugget in like a whole sea of stones, and they're all working independently, but they're all interconnected, and kind of seeing how it plays out. So that's something that I guess has been done to a degree. I haven't seen it in a mainline comic book or cartoon. It would be kind of neat to see, though.
Funny for me, like how Cobra works and its ridiculousness is actually the most realistic feeling part it is. I've had a mature career. I have had a Cobra commander as a boss at one point or another. It's like, how can they get them to put on these crazy uniforms? I worked at McDonald's. I've worn, uniforms that like Raptor wouldn't have worn because I had to, and I was told to, and I didn't even question it. So if you're private security and somebody hands you a gun and says, stand in front of this thing, you stand in front of the thing.
Yeah.
And, or you lose your health insurance. So, you don't want to do that. And it feels like the silliness of it, when I was a kid, all of the weirdest things that it was seem to have actually played out realistically in real life. Maybe not exactly like as terrorist organizations, but the company town. I lived in St. Catharines, Ontario. Everybody worked for GM.
Yeah.
And if you said a bad thing about GM, you would be completely ostracized. It's just one of those things that when a company is the lifeblood of town, that's what happens. And when you see St. Catharines, GM left. And when GM left, all of a sudden it was a company town with no company. And so if an organization comes in and says jobs, healthcare, function, meaning, it's going to take a little bit of a weird thing, but no weirder than working for Tesla, apparently, where you have this weird Cobra Commander-like guy who's saying, it's 26, and just like the kind of insanity that comes out of just regular jobs in regular places now. It doesn't seem that unrealistic that a Cobra could just swoop in and say, you're a private security company. These are your benefits. This is how you get paid. Yes, you have to wear this symbol, but it's branding. It's part of our, what we want branding to show the world. And yes, okay, the boss is a little bit nuts, but that's okay. You won't have to see him that much, and try not to. And it feels like that could happen. It's not as outrageous as anything that's happening in the real world.
I think the day Elon Musk shows up at a press conference dressed in battle armor, arriving on a pogo, will be the day all of us fringy G.I. Joe fans are like, yes, we knew it.
I have seen him walk out on stage with a pair of functional flamethrowers, one in each hand. Okay. You can't make this stuff up. That feels very Cobra.
Yeah, see, if Larry wrote that in the comic, that's too silly. That wouldn't happen.
Elon Musk, this is going to get libelous. It's like he's the comic book villain that you never would believe is a comic book villain. People would laugh this guy off the stage. They wouldn't take what he's saying seriously. But you know what? Money and I won't say charisma, but when you make a lot of money, people assume you know what you're talking about, and I'll just leave it at that.
And I'd make further comments, but I don't want to.
You're going to get a lot of angry Tesla fans review bombing this podcast and sending nasty messages to you on Facebook.
Oh, so I didn't go a step further and talk about Trump, but
I just fair enough. I drive a Tesla. I love it. It's a great car. Like driving an iPhone, but it is how that car got to be, and the mechanisms and the business and everything around it it's a little weird. And product is good, but the process is very strange. And so it makes the 1980s, these wackadoo, strange, crazy organizations seem kind of normal. I mean, not even really that super weird.
Elon Musk is not that much older than us, so he was born in the 70s and grew up in the 80s. I'll bet you he was a G.I. Joe fan. I'll bet you he's familiar with the comic, with the cartoon, with the toys. I'll bet you. I will bet you.
And again, just to see if I can piss off people a little bit more, maybe more of a Cobra fan. But that's anyways, I digress.
They say, sure, Cobra Commander, Weather Dominator, Mass Device, and everything. But once you move aside all the megalomania and world destruction, he had some pretty interesting ideas about workforce management and
technological
living. So, every silver lining is a cloud.
Self-driving robots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think your Tesla is going to become self-aware and the little Cobra symbol is going to pop up on the thing and it's going to turn into like a transforming battle android trooper or anything like that? Because I could see that.
You never know.
The challenge would be that I'd have to pay like $1,100 more as an upgrade in order to get that function, because they never give you anything for free.
No.
So I would have to pay
maybe they'll give you the option and say, would you like to upgrade your car to the Cobra battle android transforming assault vehicle? It's only $11,000 more on your package. What do you say? And you can be stuck in traffic and go, you know what? I could use that right now. How long is it going to take to arrive? Is it a firmware upgrade, or do I have to go download something and put in a patch or whatever? Is it buggy?
So watch your email, Charles. I'm sure we get an email anytime about that.
Well, the funny thing though, if you do ask a Tesla, right? So you can say, Tesla, do this, right? Say, Tesla, deploy rocket launchers. And the message comes up, that function is not available yet.
Yet. And you guys have brought up some very interesting points. While working directly for Cobra Commander, he's not the most stable person. But if you're living like in a Springfield, that town probably runs pretty damn good until the the U.S. military comes up and starts blowing everything away. But up until that point, I'm pretty sure, living in Springfield or wherever he's at now, at Broca Beach or whatever. Yeah, you got this weird guy who walks down the street every once in a while. You got a guy dressed as a bird comes walking behind him. So, but overall, the town runs pretty smooth. And it's I think we're making a point for moving to Springfield or Rock Beach. But,
Aaron, don't you live in California? Like, isn't that like normal? Like people dressed as birds and shirtless, wearing suspenders.
Well, see, I'm up in the Central Valley, so a lot more farmers and things. I'm not down the L.A. or up in the San Francisco area. I'm right between them. So I miss out on some of that, but not all of it. So that is not that strange in California. You are correct, my friend. Yes. Another that I had, and we've talked about it before, I think it was last episode when on Flint's vacation, when Flint went to his family and they all called him Flint instead of his real name. He comes here and they call him Dusty. I'm going to mispronounce his last name. Rudat. When his name is Ron. So it's weird. His family, the people in the town call him Dusty also, much like, everyone called Flint. Yeah. So much for a top secret organization. Everyone calls him by his code name, even at home. I thought that was a little, again, much like them calling his family calling him Flint by his code name. Yeah. The guy, the old lawyer, whatever that he knows for years. Hey, Dusty, what do you call him, Ron? I understand for toy purposes, we need to keep that name going, but I just thought that's strange.
And we all know who Ron Rudat was, right? Who's the G.I. Joe figure designer. And so Dusty was his tribute figure, much in the way that Tunnel Rat was Larry's tribute figure. And so
Kurt Bozigan, wasn't it? Or am I thinking?
I don't remember who.
I think Kurt Bozigan is Law from Law and Order. I think they said that the face design of him is taken off of Kurt. So
who was Leatherneck? I'm sorry, I was searching the internet real quick because now it's got me wondering who. Because I know Leatherneck was based on somebody also, but I can't remember who it was now.
Leatherneck was Ron A. Rudat.
Okay, Leatherneck was based on Ron's look, and Dusty had Ron's name. There you go. That's what it was. Yeah, I knew there was a tie into Leatherneck also, as it looking like. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Tunnel Rat's look was based on Larry Hama. So, I do like that a lot of these figures, the toys, the characters are based around people involved with G.I. Joe. It's fantastic. I love that you get, immortalize Ron Rudat's look or his name. It's just fantastic. But let me see. The cartoon. We're talking about the cartoon and the Traitor. Yeah, the Traitor. Like I say, when I first watched it, I'm like, well, Dusty can't be a traitor. What the heck? And so again, next month we'll talk more about that. But unlike Charles, I didn't have to wait several years to see the resolution. I watched the next episode to see what happened with Dusty. I think it was the next day. I think this was on the weekdays here. So yeah, the next day I got to see how that worked out. So, but yeah, no, I love these two parts. Are fantastic. They may have some ridiculous aspects to them, but overall, yeah, these are sometimes more serious or more involved, a little better written, I think, than a lot of the one-parters. So, yeah, great episode. I really enjoyed that. Any other thoughts on either the cartoon or the comic, Charles? Anything we haven't touched on?
I'm new here, so this has been a really pleasant experience. But I didn't realize I was supposed to do homework and make notes. So
you can wing it. You can wing it on this podcast. You can wing it. You can just make stuff up.
Jared never does, so you're fine.
But no, I think that we got a very interesting coverage of real diverging things as G.I. Joe went sillier in the comics and as it went really serious in the cartoon.
Yes.
You couldn't have had a more diverse selection of two different things. And it really, watching again, really made me appreciate the fact that it didn't write down to me. It didn't pretend I was a stupid little kid. It was willing to give me heavy, difficult things. There was silliness, there was craziness, and all of those different bits to it. But there are some real stakes here. There was, at least to kidhood me, a real sense of, I don't understand why this is happening and it's bad. And they've even shown me why it's bad. I mean, this is the first 2 seasons of Breaking Bad in 22 minutes. And it really just puts a person in a terrible position. And you go, my parents are well, but what if they weren't? What would I do? And you don't, as a kid, ask yourself those type of questions. And the cartoon made you do that. Whereas the comic made you try and accept that G.I. Joe was going the direction of bouncy balls and birdmen. And that in and of itself was an attempt, like an attempt to change your mind about things. And I feel, I never really put it into my head that I should really feel sorry for Larry having to go to these meetings over and over again and go, you got me what? Can I put a shirt on him? No, just a shirt. Like you could wear the thing around just a shirt. No. Okay. Yep. Okay. We got that. It seemed like it was going a different direction. And he rolled with the punches, managed to come up with a good plot, come up with very classic ones, leading to big battles, which I'm sure you'll talk about on other ones. Maybe when you come back I can come back to talk about the Battle of Cobra Island, because that was a truly amazing thing. But yeah, so we've talked about a lot of changes today, and that was really very interesting. So I'm very glad. Thank you for inviting me onto this. As a pitch, I'm hoping that fairly soon we're going to hear about the new Energon role-playing game once. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Hopefully, we're right now in the middle of October. As long as I don't get delayed anymore, I should start dropping the episodes of the Energon Protocols next month in November.
That'd be fantastic. So it's been amazing fun to play, and it's been amazing to be introduced to your world and all of the various different podcasts and things like that are on the channel. It's been just a tremendous eye-opening way to make new friends.
Yes, very much so. Thank you. And again, I'm glad I met you and glad to have you on the show. And yeah, anytime you want to come on, let me know. I'll pitch you down if you want to be on for the Battle of Cobra Island. That's definitely another great story arc. So I will definitely pencil you in for that. And Brad, any final thoughts on anything we've talked about today?
Well, I got to tell you, when I sat down to record this episode, I had no idea we'd be talking about the differences between Canadian and American healthcare and Elon Musk, Breaking Bad, and St. Catharines, where my mother still lives, I might add, by the way, the old company town. I was just going to say, just as an overall about this episode, but particularly this issue, it was a few episodes back I missed when you guys covered yearbook number 3, and several of you, Jared being one of them, professed your love of Batman Forever. Spoiler alert to anyone who doesn't know me, I'm not a fan of either of the Joel Schumacher Batman films, which should come as no surprise. Bear with me. At the same time, I'm glad they exist. I'm glad that there's some campy Silver Age inspired Batman in the movies because, frankly, every other incarnation of him post Tim Burton has just been this very grimdark slog. And I actually prefer the Schumacher films to the Snyderverse ones because, unlike Snyderverse, Schumacher films know that they're silly. But carrying that thought forward, while I'm still not a big fan of Raptor, I do appreciate he exists. And G.I. Joe, in the end, is supposed to be fun and outlandish, kind of campy and colorful. And I'm sure we've all read some of the different iterations of the G.I. Joe property released post 2005, 2006 that play things much more seriously. And while you can praise them for their storytelling merits, I wouldn't call a lot of them fun. This is fun. So in the end, this comic is fun. Even though this episode of the show delves into some pretty heady stuff, it too is also fun. And that's why we're here on this podcast, which is also fun. So I'll just leave it there.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I think last month we also got some heavy subjects talking about, the way the U.S. deals with the military and healthcare and all that. So, or not healthcare, but mental health. So yeah, sometimes, we talk about, guys dressed as birds. We also get some heavy subjects sometimes. Brad, if people wants to hear more from you and your hatred of Raptor, work.
Well, you know what? I actually am going to take the opportunity to make an announcement here on this particular podcast because I was thinking a while back that, which is always a dangerous habit in itself. And I realized that of all of us regulars here, Dave and you and Jared and what's that other guy's name? That guy? Oh, Kevin, right. And I suppose Charles as well. You guys all have podcasts of your own. I am like the perpetual Ed McMahon on these things. Jared's gotten me on his Indiana Jones one coming up. And I thought to myself, what I really need is I really need a podcast of my own. So I decided to rectify this. And I'm making the formal announcement here that starting in January, my podcast, which is the Celluloid Heroes podcast, which is a 50-year journey through the highlights of Gen X cinema, will be hitting your ear holes.
Really?
And it's a spin-off of sorts from a website series I've been running at bradabraham.com over the last few years, where I would spotlight a certain movie of the era that I first experienced in the theaters and has subsequently become a favorite movie. I did Back to the Future. I did Stand By Me. I did Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I did John Carpenter's The Thing. I did Reservoir Dogs. I've done a whole bunch of them. And I thought, well, you know what? I can do a lot more. So I'm going to be doing that starting in January, and it should run every month. And I'm going to be covering everything from Star Wars, E.T., and Explorers to Predator, They Live, and Tim Burton's Batman, to Singles, Dazed and Confused, Reservoir Dogs, to Boogie Nights, Ed Wood, The Limey, Pan's Labyrinth, Children of Men, The Dark Knight, all the way up to The World's End, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and The Irishman. So click on to bradabraham.com. I'll be making announcements there. And as we get closer to the air date of the first episode, which I have recorded and have finished editing, and I've recorded the audio for the second one. So it's definitely happening, and I will definitely let people know that it's out there because I hope everybody tunes in. So that is my announcement. Thank you.
Very nice. Well, thank you for announcing that. Yes, the podcasting bug has finally gotten to Brad, and he's got his own shows coming out. Very good. And very nice.
I look forward to listening to it. That'd be fantastic.
It is fantastic. Thank you. If I do say so myself.
I don't understand why Aaron was saying so many horrible things about you coming into this. I'm like, Brad's great. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Aaron's been saying bad things about me ever since I started podcasting on his show, but he always invites me back. The fact that he invited me to come onto this episode to talk about Raptor means he actually actively enjoys having me on his show.
I do. No, I give Brad crap about his hate for Zartan, Serpentor, and most recently Raptor. But no, Brad's
and Dr. Mindbender too. Dr. Mindbender. Let's not forget Dr. Mindbender.
Yeah, can't forget about Mindbender and his
Dr. Brain Fart.
Yes, but no, I appreciate Brad. Yeah, Brad's got not about a lot, but he's got occasional wisdom.
Some.
No, Brad's a great guy, and like he said, he didn't expect to be here for this episode, so he kind of last month on the last episode he kind of talked about how he may not like Raptor, but he likes it. People like myself enjoys it, and no matter what you may or may not like about it, you like G.I. Joe, so that's a good thing. So I enjoy having you on, Brad, and I can't wait to listen to your shows, man. Fantastic.
Thank you.
And Charles, do you have anything else going on? I know you're on the Energon Protocols, which should come out next month.
I don't have a podcast, and I feel like I'm embarrassed as a result of that. We'll see. I don't actually have anything terribly interesting to say yet, so I think I need to go out and find some interesting things, and then maybe
here I am.
could have one of those. But because otherwise it'll just evolve into like making fun of American healthcare and Elon Musk and all those things, and there's too many out there that are like that, like this one. So I don't know. I will see, but I'm really maybe I will catch the bug because all of Aaron's work is really amazing. And Brad, I feel like I don't know, fellow Canadian or something. I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like I'm going to be very interested in
you
your
can't
take
tell
on
because the sun is setting here on the East Coast, but I'm actually wearing my Avro Lancaster shirt from the RCAF
There you
store.
go.
So
I will mention that. I will plug once again Brad's book, Magicians Impossible, which came out.
Thank you.
Quite a while ago. I've read it, and I love it. It's a fantastic book. I recommend anyone that.
So do I.
Yeah, of course you would.
I recommend it too.
You should. Yeah, it's a great book. I love it. I thought because I looked up and staring at my shelf, I'm looking at it right now. So next to my Joy of Joe and Beyond Mirror Image for Quantum Leap. So it's fantastic. Great book.
Let's not forget about Buzz showing up in San Diego Comic-Con and checking out Cheeky on the Kindle downloads.
Yes, I threw both links in the Facebook group. So he will be in San Diego. Unfortunately, I'll be visiting my daughter this coming weekend and her band stuff. So I'll make it to that. Unfortunately, there's also the link to Cheeky in there. Definitely check those out. Yeah, I've talked with Buzz before. Great guy. Has a passion for it. You can tell when, talking to him, he has a passion for this. So I definitely recommend anything Buzz does. So definitely check it out. As far as me, I am here on the Headcast Network. Currently, my website is headcast.headspeaks.com. That's for my podcasting stuff. I've got my Facebook groups, or facebook.com/groups/Headcast Network. And for this show, it's facebook.com/groups/GI Joe. Over on YouTube, I've got the two different YouTube channels. I've got my Head Speaks one, but then I've also got my one for here, which is youtube.com/g.i.joe_headcast. Again, we are here normally the fourth Sunday of every month, talking to you guys about G.I. Joe. And the third Friday of every month, I'm doing my live unboxing and review shows. Like I say, this last episode, we opened up, talked about my buddy Raptor here. So definitely check that out. Both shows go live at 1:00 p.m. California time. So definitely join us. And I've got my other shows, Head Speaks, where I talk about comic books and anything geeky. Right now, I've got where I'm looking back at years in the 1980s. Because again, as I've mentioned before, 1980s is kind of my time period I love. So I'm taking a specific year and looking at and talking about the pop culture stuff from those years. I'm not sure what comic book I'm going to cover next. I've got a lot of comics in mind. Some I'm going to cover on that show. Some I do their own shows for eventually, but a lot going on in my life. I've also got this show, which currently is G.I. Joe Real American Headcast, and then Bravo Team. And then hopefully coming out, hopefully be in November when this episode drops. There will also be the first episode of the Energon Protocols, starring myself and Mr. Charles Cushman as Classified, where we play the Renegade Studios role-playing game. Again, I can't recommend that system enough. It's fantastic, even though they do have ponies in there also. But no, it's a great
so fun, though.
It is
so fun. I don't think I've ever been on anything like that has been more fun, just because it is Eric's such a good storyteller.
Oh, he is.
We got a really good group of guys there. And if you don't enjoy it, then I've certainly not done my job well. But I can't imagine anyone not enjoying listening to this one.
Oh, yeah, no, it's fantastic. We do a great job on it. You guys are fantastic to play with. And then I've got the wife and I still have our Quantum Leap show, which is the Starbright Project. Right now it's on a bit of a break because, again, as I mentioned, my daughter's in band and the football season's ending, but then she's got competition starting. The first one was last night in real time, so we're busy with that on the weekend. So we've had to hold on that. Plus, we're trying to refigure what we're doing with that show. But you can listen to the Starbright Project for more information on that. I've got my Task Force X and my Starman Adventure Hour shows. Those are coming to an end within the next year or so. So definitely check out the Headcast Network. And again, I want to thank you guys very much. For anyone that's listening to the show on the podcast, definitely check us out if you want to see what happens behind the scenes and things that don't make it into the show, and to see some of the videos I'm putting on and all that. Definitely show up for the YouTube show. And everyone on YouTube, I want to thank you guys for watching. But until next month, remember, knowing is half the battle. Yo, Joe.
We shouldn't be in here. Let's go. Okay, follow me. What's the matter, you chicken? I can't jump that far. Okay, chicken, I'm leaving you here. Use your head, Sally. Lady J.
There's nothing chicken about being smart. If you stop and think, there's almost always a better way.
I use this plank. That's using your head instead of losing it. Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
And then for next month...
Here comes Zanzibar!
Hey, watch it!
Guess what, mates? I discovered the Joe's rocket base! Recycle's ready!
Let's destroy it!
Watch out, Joe, because trouble awaits you! The Dreadnought cycle's gonna devastate you! Dreadnoughts! You can't escape the air skiff, mate! Oh, why didn't dirty your nice uniform, Cobra! Yo, Joe! G.I. Joe!
Will G.I. Joe ever capture the vicious Dreadnoughts? Find out in Marvel Comics.
And I'm sure you have some interesting thoughts on Zanzibar next month, Brad. And I may be right there with you.
How did you know? How did you know?
And I guess until next month, we'll see you guys then. Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.
G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, is available monthly on iTunes, Stitcher, and at headspeaks.com. All characters and stories are owned and trademarked by their respective owners. We claim no ownership other than our opinions. All audio and images are used for entertainment purposes and falls under fair use. We make no money from this headcast. For more of the monthly G.I. Joe, check out the IDW series. For the stories we're covering, look for the comics and trade paperbacks. Let us know what you think. Send us an email letting us know your thoughts. Joe's dismissed.